Today we witness the noble warriors of Lothlorien, led by Haldir, as they face off against the relentless onslaught of Mordor's Blackgate Open's legendary legion. Join us as we delve deep into the heart of Middle-earth strategy battle game, where legends are forged and destinies are decided. Prepare for glory, for the fate of Middle-earth hangs in the balance.
Hello, my name is Nathan, and welcome to Point of Might, a brand new YouTube channel dedicated to everything Middle-earth strategy battle game. For our first ever video, I've got a 600 points battle report of my Lothlorien elves taking on Dan's Blackgate Open's legendary legion from Mordor. We're playing at the Middlesbrough Gamers Club. Table looks fantastic. I hope you do enjoy the video, and if you do, make sure to do all of the YouTube things, like, comment, share, even subscribe to stay tuned and updated for more videos in the future. Anyway, let's get back to the battle.
Hi, Nathan here, and I'm bringing pure Lothlorien to the table today. I've got Haldir as my leader. He's equipped with an elf bow and heavy armour. The elf bow to make use out of his special ability, getting 2 shots each turn. Heavy armour to put him up to D6, with him being my leader, just add that valuable bit of protection. The next hero I've got is Rumil, probably one of my favourite heroes in the game. His special ability, allowing you to force the opponent to re-roll one of their dice in the duel, makes him win the fight more often than not. Lastly, I've got the Galadhrim captain on an armoured horse with shield, brings a bit of punching power to the list, being strength 4, gives him 6 dice to strike blows, getting the knockdown. He also brings march to the list, being predominantly infantry, massively valuable in some of the objective games. My strategy for this army is to use the elf shooting to whittle down the numbers so that we have a similar amount of models when the battle lines do meet, which will allow the higher fight value of the elves to really win that frontline clash, coupled with using two-handed strikes where it's worth it to really kill the opponent's models. Also using the Wood Elf Sentinels for a bit of shenanigans, moving out banners, moving out heroes into bad positions, potentially jumping on them. Let's win all the fights, kill some orcs, and get the win!
Hi, my name's Dan. I'm playing the Blackgate Legendary Legion today at 600 points. My leader is the Troll Chieftain. In this legion, he is a hero of valour, and he must be the leader. And he also gains a special rule called the Greatest of Trolls, which grants him 1 extra might, will and fate, and he also gains the Fearless rule. The Chief is really good, really strong, but it can just be sometimes it can be difficult to get him into combat because of his large base size. The Mouth of Sauron is my caster. I've given him the armoured horse as well, so I've paid an extra 15 points for that, just to give him a bit more manoeuvrability. And what I usually do with him is I'll keep him out of combat, casting his transfix until he's used up his 4 will. And then once that's gone, that's when I charge him into combats and things then. The plan is also to try and get the most out of the +1 to wound rule in this legion. So that's why I've tried to get in as many Moran and Orcs as I can, hence the model count of 40. I've included 3 bows, hoping to shoot out a horse from under a hero, or just generally to be a pain. although I will say I don't think I've ever actually killed anything with them. One thing I also try to do is once the force breaks, I'll try and get as many of the orcs around the chief as I can, just so it can benefit from his fearless rule in like stand fast courage checks. So that's the plan. Let's see how it goes against these tricky elves.
Mordor wind deployment. Deploying the first warband led by the Morannon Orc captain on the west side objective. In response, the Galadhrim captain deploys also on the west side, but hangs far back. Mordor takes this opportunity with the Mouth of Sauron and deploys also on the east objective. In reply to this, Rumil takes a bunch of elves, deploys on a hill with good shooting lanes into that warband. The final warband for Mordor, Beefy Chiefy's warband, deploys along the centre line with a Beefy Chiefy troll hiding behind a tree so some of his stragglers can claim that rear objective. And the final deployment of the game is Haldir, who deploys on the rear objective with a host of elves. Mordor start bringing their forces forward, using the hedge to hide from that elf shooting, but wanting to press forward to try and claim that far objective. The Mouth of Sauron repositions into a more central position, allowing his orc archers some shooting lanes, with the rest of his warband creating a battle line along the east objective. On to Lothlorien's movement phase. The Wood Elf Sentinel plays his harp and sings Eldamar Madrigal to the Orc Warrior on the end. He takes a courage test and he fails, meaning that Orc Warrior is charging full speed into the Galadhrim lines, all by himself. The elves and the Galadhrim captain take this opportunity to jump and trap that Orc Warrior. Coming across to the eastern objective, the Wood Elf Sentinel in Rumil's warband also plays Eldamar Madrigal at one of the Orc Warriors. That Orc Warrior passes his courage test. Rumil and his warriors part, creating a shooting line for the elf archers on the hill. Onto the shooting phase. 3 Orc Warriors line up some shots that all miss. The elves in reply have quite a few shots from across the board. Let's see how well they can do in return. That brings us to the only fight of the combat phase. This one Orc Warrior trapped by lots of elves. No surprises here, he loses the fight and gets slaughtered. At the start of turn 2 on the eastern objective, we have a familiar sight. Eldamar Madrigal is played in one of the Orc Warriors, who passes his courage test. Quickly followed by the other Wood Elf Sentinel doing exactly the same thing. The Orcs love it. Jumping back to the eastern flank, we can see Rumil has taken his warriors and marches round the outside of this building. Haldir and his elves in the centre reform their line, protecting that rear objective. The Morannon Orcs on the eastern objective reform their own line using the cover of that ruined building to protect from the elven bowfire. The Orc archers decide not to move as they've lined up a shot on one of the elves who's coming round that building. The Orcs in the centre see an opportunity to block off the lane for the elves, pinning them in at their own rear objective. Around the western flank they march forward. The Wood Elf Sentinel has a cheeky pop shot at the Chiefy Beefy trying for a leader wound, but fails. A few shots go into that orc line, taking one down. Mordor wins the roll-off of priority. Haldir uses a point of might and calls a heroic move to use that choke point the orc warriors have put themselves into and to make sure that battle is as far away from the rear objective as possible. Haldir charges in first, brings along 2 pikes to support him to win his fight, kill some orcs. And then the rest of the Galadhrim lines fall upon the orc warriors, hoping to win that line-on-line war. The Galadhrim captain sees that there is an opportunity for the beefy chiefy to jump over that hedge, so he positions himself in a way where the beefy chiefy would have no place to land if he did jump over the hedge, effectively protecting that rear flank. Back to Mordor's movement phase. With the front line locked in place, a few support pieces like the leader and the banner have moved into position, with those warriors that are on the western flank rushing forward to see if they can get behind the lines, or potentially into the Galadhrim Knight and Wood Elf Sentinel. The Morannon Orc line pushes back to use more of that terrain to protect from the elven shots coming from the hill. The elven archers walk down the hill to make shooting into that orc warrior line that little bit easier. The Wood Elf Sentinel sings Eldamar Madrigal again. The orc needing an 8 or higher to pass his courage test rolls an 8. Coming back to the other Wood Elf Sentinel, who does the exact same thing, sings Eldamar Madrigal at the Morannon Orc captain. Let's see if he's courageous. He needs a 7. He fails on a 4, meaning he's running full speed away from his orc warriors out in the open. The Wood Elf Sentinel decides to charge that Morannon Orc captain. Although he is defense 3, he brings 2 attacks to the fight and brings along his friend, the Galadhrim Knight, creating the knockdown, leaving that Morannon Orc captain in a tricky situation. That brings us into the shoot phase. The Orc warriors shoot first. They target the guards of the Galadhrim court, with them being a lower defense, giving them a slightly higher chance to wound. However, both Orc warriors miss. The Orc shooting hasn't done very well this game. The elves, having a higher fight value against the Morannon Orc captain, roll a 6, winning the fight. Striking blows, they create 3 wounds that cannot be saved by the Morannon Orc captain, killing him instantly. We return to the centre of the battlefield after the combat phase. There's been casualties on both sides, with 1 Galadhrim warrior being taken out to 2 Morannon Orcs. Looking good so far for the elves. Lothlorien 1 priority. The Mordor Troll Chieftain calls a heroic move. Haldir and the Galadhrim captain chose not to countercall and let that move go off, knowing that the Mordor Troll Chieftain was not able to get into combat. So even though the Morannon Orcs could pick their fights slightly better, there was not much value in winning or causing a roll-off for the heroic move. After the Orc warriors collapse on the Galadhrim line, the Mouth of Sauron attempts to cast a transfix on the Galadhrim banner bearer. Needing a 3, but rolling a 1, the spell is not successful and no points of might are spent. Now onto the standard movement phase for Lothlorien. The Wood Elf Sentinel sings Eldamar Madrigal at one of the Orc warriors. He fails his courage test and stands still. The same thing on the western flank. One of the Orcs on the objective fails his courage test. At the end of Lothlorien's movement phase, we can see they've shuffled the lines in the centre, with the archers electing to stand still, hoping to clip a few shots off those Orc warriors running around the outside. On the eastern flank, the battle lines are finally hit. We're fighting over that objective. There's plenty of pike supports for the elves, and the Morannon Orcs trying to spread out to get that +1 to wound from their legendary legion bonus. Rumil calls a heroic combat in on one Morannon Orc. He wins the fight, gets to strike blows, and with his pike supports, he kills that Morannon Orc. Moves on to the Orc Archer. He again wins the fight, with that Orc Archer being trapped. Rumil strikes blows, and once again kills another Orc. Mordor win priority, and Lothlorien call a heroic move. It's counter-called by the Mouth of Sauron, who casts a transfix on Rumil that successfully goes off, cancelling his heroic move. The Orcs come in and trap him. The Wood Elf Sentinel sings a song at one of the spear supports, but he passes his courage test. Same thing happens on the western flank. Another Orc warrior passes a courage test. At the end of the combat phase, we see Rumil won his fight, but was unable to strike blows due to the transfix. Haldir and his elves in the centre have had a mixed bag. The Orcs are managing to push through, and there's been casualties on both sides. Haldir's got a few kills, but is he able to hold out with that Troll Chieftain coming in? On the very western side of the board, the Wood Elf Sentinel manages to win his fight along with the Galadhrim Knight, but no casualties. Mordor win priority once again. Rumil calls a heroic move, which is counter-called by the Mouth of Sauron. The roll-off goes to good, and Rumil gets his elves to collapse into the Orcs on that eastern objective. The Mouth of Sauron goes next. He decides not to call with me and charges back over to that eastern flank to help out with that objective. Back to Mordor's normal move, and with them seeing the Galadhrim captains running around the outside of that hedge, the Mordor Troll Chieftain makes his way back to intercept that breakaway and stop him from running to the rear objective. The Orcs on the western flank charge in against the Galadhrim Knight and the Wood Elf Sentinel once again. Eldamar Madrigal is sang once again at that Orc spear support. This time he fails his courage test and runs away from the fight into the open allowing the Wood Elf Sentinel to charge in. The Galadhrim captain sees the beefy chiefy and decides to charge the 2 orcs on the objective. Onto the combat phase, the Mouth of Sauron rolls a 6 in the duel. The elf is shielded. With the same fight value, the elf just needs to see that 6. 3 high, not good enough. Comes over to the Galadhrim captain's fight. It's him versus 2 orcs. He's mounted and he charges. The orcs set the bar on a 5. The Galadhrim captain does have the high fight value. He needs the 5 or the 6 to win the duel. There's the 6. Just what he needed. The orcs are now knocked prone, with them being infantry and being charged by a mounted hero. The Galadhrim captain gets to double his strikes against each orc. The first strike goes in and kills the first one, meaning the next 2 attacks doubled to 4 dice with him being prone or going into the second orc. He rolls a 4 high, chooses to spend a point of might to get that kill and clear off the objective. With that last kill, the Mordor force is broken. They've won priority, so it's decision time. Dan decides to use the Mordor Troll Chieftain to go and take out that Galadhrim captain. That does leave the orcs in the middle, needing to take courage tests. They each take a courage test, and only one passes. Charges into Haldir. On the western board edge, however, only one orc warrior fails a courage test, so they all charge in. On the eastern objective, the Mouth of Sauron moves first, hoping to pass his courage test and provide a standfast to all the orc warriors. He fails that courage test and flees. The elves now have full control over the eastern objective. Going into what will surely be the last combat of the game, now that Mordor is at 25%, the game will end at the end of this turn. The Mordor Troll Chieftain has the higher fight value, so he rolls his dice first to see if he wins the fight. He rolls a 4 high and uses a banner reroll to also get a 4 high. Sadly for the Galadhrim captain, he only rolls a 3, having no points of might, nothing he can do. The Mordor Troll Chieftain then rends and rolls 3 wounds on the Galadhrim captain, killing him instantly. At the end of the battle, Lothlorien had defended well. They'd broken the Mordor force, which gave them 1 victory point. They fully took the eastern objective, which granted them another 2 victory points. Haldir maintained his ground and kept the rear objective in their deployment zone, granting another victory point. That's 4 victory points to Lothlorien. Mordor, on the other hand, took the western objective in the last turn of the game, which gave them 2 victory points. However, were unable to keep their back objective, ending the game 4-2 to Lothlorien.
That was one tough battle. Taking out that captain early meant a couple of points of might taken off the table, and the fact that Mouth of Sauron failed his courage test at the end just gave me that objective on the east flank. I think strategically, the only real misplay from the Elves' point of view was Haldir. He didn't really get anywhere, he ended up just being stuck. Maybe if he'd have tried to push through with a heroic combat, it might have been better use of him, or even if he'd have just kind of stuck back a little bit. Heroic combat did out of that combat, so he could have come around the back and helped with a few shots, or moved his might further over so that he could have called some heroic moves later on in the game. Might have been a better option. I also think down the west flank there was a moment where the Galadhrim knight could have jumped over the fence and just ran. He would have left the sentinel to die, although he did die in the end anyway. I think that would have really put the pressure on that back objective a bit earlier, where it really came down to the fact that Dan's courage tests were poor and they all ran away as soon as we got the break. I think from Dan's point of view, the only real thing I think he was frustrated about was not being able to get the Troll Chieftain into combat. He got one combat right at the very end, killed the Galadhrim captain, which was just sent out there to try and take that objective last kind of turn. If we got it, great. The fact that he went that way meant that the Troll Chieftain had to leave the orcs in the centre to shore up that objective. Given that he was broken, if enough went from around the battlefield, he would have been at 25% anyway, but it just meant that all those orcs, one of them stayed and ran into Haldir, the rest of them just ran away, so he had nothing left to take any objectives with, basically, and that was game. Thanks for making it this far. Really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on A Point of Might.